Picture this: airline staff openly mock a black woman, convinced she doesn't belong in first class. They question her ticket, whisper insults, and escalate their harassment even onto the plane. Little do they know, she's not just any passenger, she's a U.S. senator traveling quietly. What happens when their prejudice pushes her too far, forcing her to reveal the stunning truth with her official Senate ID? The confrontation is intense, the consequences swift and severe. Find out exactly how this dramatic encounter unfolded and what became of the disrespectful employees. Like this video, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe to uncover the full story. They say that real power doesn't always wear a sign around its neck, and that sometimes underestimating the quiet figure in the corner can be your biggest mistake. That's exactly what happened on an ordinary day at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, where an unsuspecting black woman strolled into the terminal, minding her own business. Little did the airline staff know, behind her polite smiles and low-key demeanor lay a U.S. senator's credentials, one that could send shock waves through their entire operation. Mocked and dismissed for her appearance, she kept her calm until the insults piled up. Then, her bold move changed everything. Senator Evelyn Hayes stood at the entrance to Chicago O'Hare's bustling Terminal 3, pulling a modest carry-on behind her. She wore a practical yet elegant navy pantsuit with a simple leather purse slung across her shoulder. Her hair was styled neatly, and her only jewelry was a subtle pair of pearl earrings. She enjoyed traveling light, no entourage, no flashy displays. It reminded her of her upbringing on the south side of Chicago, where her parents had taught her the power of hard work and quiet resilience. Evelyn was in her second term as a U.S. Senator from Illinois. Despite her growing national recognition, she often found that people didn't immediately place her face, especially when she was off television and without the typical trappings of high office. She preferred it that way. It allowed her to gauge everyday experiences firsthand and connect with constituents on a personal level. Today, she was flying to Washington, D.C. for urgent committee hearings on infrastructure funding. The morning had been hectic. She'd wrapped up a community meeting in Peoria, fielded half a dozen calls from colleagues, and now had just enough time to catch her early afternoon flight. As she navigated the throngs of travelers, she didn't expect any special treatment, only standard courtesy. Still, she noticed subtle glances from passers-by. Some recognized her but weren't entirely sure, others just thought she looked vaguely familiar. Reaching the American Airlines check-in area, Evelyn approached the baggage drop counter. Even though she was traveling light, she had a small piece of luggage containing briefing materials that she preferred to check so she could move freely through the airport. Behind the counter, a pair of uniformed employees, one named Mark, the other Brenda, looked bored, huddled together. Both appeared to be in their mid-20s, wearing standard-issue airline uniforms complete with name tags. Evelyn offered a polite smile as she placed her bag on the scale and presented her driver's license. "Good afternoon," she said warmly, trying to set a positive tone. Mark barely glanced at her. Instead, he flicked his eyes toward the screen and spoke in a flat monotone. "ID," he mumbled, inputting her details without making eye contact. Brenda, meanwhile, seemed engrossed in something on her phone hidden below the counter, stifling a giggle. Mark paused, frowning at the computer. "Ah, looks like you booked a first-class ticket." "That's correct," Evelyn replied evenly. She'd paid for first class herself. She needed the quiet space to review documents for the committee hearing, and she traveled frequently enough to justify the expense using her own funds or miles. Mark snorted softly, exchanging a glance with Brenda. Something akin to amusement flickered across his face. Brenda looked up, giggled openly this time, and returned to her phone, making no effort to hide the smirk tugging at her lips. Evelyn's brow furrowed slightly, but she remained composed. She had faced worse disrespect in the political arena from adversaries who underestimated her, but this was unexpected coming from airline staff. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" she asked calmly. "No, no problem," Mark murmured, but his tone hinted otherwise. He printed out the baggage tag and slapped it onto her suitcase handle abruptly. "Take your bag to the oversized drop area over there," he pointed vaguely, making it clear he had no intention of assisting further. Brenda's stifled laughter floated in the background. Evelyn felt a twinge of anger. Still, she swallowed it, took her luggage tag receipt, and walked away toward the designated drop-off. She reminded herself that courtesy was a two-way street, but some people simply refuse to meet you halfway. For now, she let it slide. Yet a small voice inside her whispered that this might only be the beginning. Not long after, Evelyn wheeled her carry-on toward the TSA security lines. Thankfully, the pre-check line was shorter. She had pre-check as part of her frequent travel for official duties, though she rarely flashed her senator credentials unless absolutely necessary. As she placed her laptop and shoes in separate bins, she heard faint snickers from somewhere behind her. She turned slightly to see Brenda and Mark stepping up to the TSA line, apparently off duty now or repositioning, chatting with each other while they eyed Evelyn. She overheard whispered comments. "Brenda, first class, sure. Did you see her old carry-on? Like it's from Goodwill. Mark, the nerve of some people. Bet she scammed some upgrade or something." Brenda tittered, "Right? She definitely doesn't look like she belongs up there with the business crowd." Their eyes flicked toward Evelyn, who pretended she couldn't hear. Her chest tightened. The open mockery stung, particularly because they'd formed such a quick, ugly assumption about her. She forced herself to remain calm. Senators were used to tough words, but this felt more personal, more pointed at her race and perceived social standing. She took a deep breath, telling herself that not everyone at American Airlines was like these two. She tried to focus on her official obligations waiting in D.C. Yet a flicker of anger persisted. If their behavior worsened, she might have to remind them, politely but firmly, of the respect every passenger deserved. Once Evelyn cleared security, she checked her boarding pass, Gate K-12 for American Airlines Flight 1081. She had some time before boarding, so she decided to grab a coffee. As she sat sipping her latte and reviewing notes, a uniformed American Airlines staff member approached her, this one with a name tag that read Denise. She had a kind face. "Excuse me, ma'am," Denise said quietly. "I just wanted to apologize if you experienced any unpleasantness at the check-in counter earlier. I noticed Mark and Brenda, well, their behavior wasn't appropriate. They've had complaints before. If you need any assistance later, I'll be working near Gate K10. Evelyn felt a mix of gratitude and surprise. "Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. I did sense some unprofessional behavior." "It wasn't just you," Denise confirmed with a sympathetic nod before leaving. Evelyn felt a wave of relief that not everyone condoned such behavior, but Denise's warning lingered. Arriving at Gate K-12, Evelyn found the waiting area crowded. Her flight to Washington National Airport was set to board in 30 minutes. She spotted a seat near the window and settled down, trying to focus on her talking points. Then, like a bad omen, Mark and Brenda appeared at the gate podium, apparently assigned to assist with the boarding process. Evelyn's stomach tightened. They stood there, scanning the crowd with bored expressions. Mark tapped on the computer, Brenda whispered in his ear, occasionally bursting into a quiet laugh. Evelyn caught flashes of condescension on their faces. Sure enough, it didn't take long for them to notice her. Mark elbowed Brenda, nodding in Evelyn's direction. Brenda rolled her eyes, then turned back to the computer with a smirk. Evelyn pretended to be absorbed in her notes, but her pulse quickened. Minutes later, an announcement crackled, "Attention passengers on American Airlines Flight 1081 to Washington National. We will begin pre-boarding shortly." Followed by the call for passengers needing assistance and families. Then came the moment Evelyn dreaded. "We will now begin boarding for our first-class passengers and executive platinum members," Mark announced perfunctorily. Brenda stood beside him, posture rigid, scanning the waiting crowd. Evelyn gathered her carry-on and took her place in the short first-class line. As she approached the podium, she could hear their voices more distinctly. "Oh, look who's here," Brenda muttered under her breath. Mark gave a quiet snicker. When it was Evelyn's turn, Brenda took her boarding pass and stared at the screen with exaggerated scrutiny. Mark craned his neck to peer at Evelyn, an expression hovering between smugness and doubt. "Miss Hayes, is it?" Brenda asked, arching a brow. "That's correct," Evelyn said evenly, her voice calm but firm. "First-class seat, I see," Brenda continued, letting the words hang in the air, loaded with unspoken skepticism. "Yes," Evelyn repeated, refusing to rise to the bait. Mark made a show of looking at the digital manifest. That's interesting," he said, tapping something on his screen. He then leaned over to Brenda and whispered loudly enough for Evelyn to hear, "We should be careful about letting people slip into first class who might not actually belong." Evelyn's anger flared, but she kept her tone level. "Is there a problem with my reservation?" Brenda hesitated, then plastered on a patronizing smile. "No problem, Miss Hayes. We just need to confirm. Sometimes people try to use miles they don't have, or other arrangements." Her tone dripped with insincerity. Jacob offered a mocking grin. "Yeah, we've got to watch out for those free riders." Behind Evelyn, other passengers shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn refused to give in to humiliation. "I assure you, there's no free riding here." Brenda shrugged, handing the boarding pass back with a slow, almost theatrical motion. "Then by all means, enjoy your flight," she drawled, making it sound like anything but a well-wish. Evelyn suppressed a heated retort, clutched her carry-on, and stepped onto the jet bridge. As she walked, her stomach churned with frustration. At the aircraft door, a flight attendant named Kevin greeted her warmly. She found solace in his courteous smile. Yet as she settled into seat 2A and caught a glimpse of Brenda's mocking expression through the cabin door, she knew this ordeal might not be over. Evelyn settled into the plush first-class seat and tried to compose herself. Kevin approached. "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I offer you a drink before takeoff?" "Just water for now, thank you," Evelyn replied, appreciative of his warmth. Passengers continued filing in. Then, to her surprise, Mark and Brenda entered the first-class cabin. It wasn't entirely unusual for gate agents to board briefly, but they seemed determined as they made a beeline for Kevin. Evelyn pretended to focus on her phone but watched as Brenda whispered something to Kevin, who frowned, his gaze sliding toward Evelyn. Mark stood behind Brenda with crossed arms. Kevin seemed to try to placate them, but Brenda kept talking insistently. Finally, Kevin nodded reluctantly and approached Evelyn's seat. "Miss Hayes," he asked softly, though the entire cabin could probably hear, "I'm very sorry to bother you, but the gate agents, they claim there might be an issue with your boarding pass again. They want to verify your seat assignment." He sounded deeply uncomfortable. Evelyn felt a sharp jolt of disbelief. "I've already shown my boarding pass twice. Why is there still a question?" "I apologize, ma'am," Kevin hesitated. "They mentioned a potential manifest error. Could I possibly scan your pass one more time?" Jaw tight, Evelyn produced the pass on her phone. Kevin scanned it. It beeped, a valid match. "See? She's fine. Seat 2A is confirmed, no errors," Kevin reported back to Mark and Brenda. But Brenda's eyes narrowed at Evelyn, and Mark shook his head as if unconvinced. The tension hung thick in the air. Evelyn took a breath, deciding to remain calm one last time. Her patience was nearing its limit. The plane's door closed, and the welcome announcement began. Mark and Brenda finally turned to leave, but not before Brenda shot one last glance at Evelyn, shaking her head with a smirk. Mark chuckled, leaving Evelyn with simmering anger. As the plane taxied, Evelyn looked out at the airfield, reflecting on how prejudice could creep into places it didn't belong. She tried to focus on the safety demonstration, reminding herself of the legislative battle waiting in D.C. Yet a part of her was determined, if Mark and Brenda tried anything else, she would not remain silent. 30 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign blinked off. Kevin and another flight attendant, Sarah, began service. Evelyn tried to review her briefing packet, but her nerves were still frayed. Suddenly, a soft chime over the intercom. Kevin, please report to the forward galley. It was Sarah, sounding anxious. Kevin excused himself. Sensing tension, Evelyn discreetly turned. Sarah looked pale. Standing next to her, unbelievably, were Mark and Brenda again. How had they gotten back on board? Had they stayed on as non-revenue passengers after finishing their gate duties? This was highly irregular. Evelyn couldn't hear every word, but phrases reached her, definitely not what she claims. Brenda. Some messed up credentials. Mark. Kevin looked conflicted. Sarah tried to calm them. Enough was enough. Evelyn unbuckled her seatbelt, ignoring the watchful eyes of other passengers, and made her way up the aisle. Is there a problem here? She asked, her tone firm but measured. Brenda crossed her arms, glaring. We have reason to believe your documentation is fraudulent. She showed Kevin something on her phone. There's no record of an Evelyn Hayes with your background paying for a first-class seat. She emphasized your background as if it were an insult. Mark chimed in, why don't you come clean about how you got this seat? Evelyn felt a surge of anger so strong it almost made her tremble. Kevin tried to intervene, we already scanned her pass, everything checks out. Brenda brushed him aside. Let me see your ID, Ms. Hayes. Right now. Evelyn's heart hammered. The lines had been drawn. She reached into her purse, fingers grazing past her driver's license, landing on the leather pouch containing her United States Senate ID. She had always been careful about flaunting her position, but these two had pushed every boundary. She removed the ID card and held it up. The official seal of the U.S. Senate gleamed under the cabin lights. You want proof? She asked calmly, though her voice quivered with contained fury. I'm Senator Evelyn Hayes of Illinois. This is my identification. A stunned silence fell over the galley. Brenda's face blanched, her smirk vanishing. Mark's eyes darted from the ID to Evelyn's face, disbelief evident. Kevin seemed equally shocked, while Sarah gasped softly. Breaking the silence, Evelyn continued, You've harassed me from the moment I checked in. You accused me of fraud and singled me out based on your assumptions. Now that you know exactly who I am, would you care to explain yourselves? Brenda sputtered. Mark managed a shaky apology, we didn't, we had no idea. No, you didn't, Evelyn cut in sharply. And that's the point. You had no idea, yet you treated me with open contempt. Your personal biases have no place in this job. This is unacceptable behavior toward any passenger, senator or not. Kevin stepped forward, carefully looking at the ID. Its authenticity was undeniable. Senator Hayes, he said gently, I am so profoundly sorry this happened on my flight. We value all passengers, and you should feel safe and respected. I need to inform the captain immediately. Brenda stood rooted, cheeks flushed. Mark stared at the floor. Yes, please inform the captain, Evelyn said, returning the ID to her purse. And when we land, I expect to speak with a senior manager from American Airlines about this. The revelation had been delivered. The next steps were up to the airline. After Kevin rushed to the cockpit, Sarah hovered apologetically. Mark and Brenda exchanged frantic whispers, their earlier bravado gone. Passengers nearby had clearly heard the commotion, a murmur rippled through the cabin. Kevin returned. Senator Hayes, the captain would like a word with you in the forward galley. Captain Miller, an authoritative woman with a calm demeanor, stood waiting. Senator Hayes, Captain Miller began quietly, I was just briefed. Let me sincerely apologize on behalf of American Airlines. This is unacceptable. We aim to treat every passenger with dignity. Captain, Evelyn replied, I appreciate that, but I expect accountability from Mark and Brenda. Their harassment was repeated. Whether I'm a senator or not is irrelevant, no passenger should endure this. I agree completely, Captain Miller nodded. I will contact operations immediately. We'll have a representative meet you at the gate in D.C. I assure you, we take these complaints very seriously. Back at her seat, Kevin discreetly asked if Mark and Brenda could offer an apology. Evelyn reluctantly agreed. They appeared, looking like scolded children. Senator Johnson, Hayes, we're really sorry, Mark stammered. Misunderstanding, irregularities on the manifest. Brenda jumped in, we didn't mean any harm, just thought someone might be using a fake identity, it happens. Evelyn's gaze was steady. So you immediately assumed I was committing fraud because... Brenda flushed. We didn't recognize you. Whether or not you recognized me shouldn't matter, Evelyn stated coolly. You crossed the line from diligence into harassment. I accept your apology on the condition that your behavior changes, not just toward me, but toward every passenger who might look different than you expect. They mumbled their thanks and retreated. The rest of the flight was subdued but tense. Upon landing smoothly at Reagan National, DCA, Evelyn saw a text from her chief of staff, Emily, heard about a situation on your flight. Media inquiries starting. News traveled fast. As passengers deplaned, Kevin confirmed, Senator Hayes, a corporate manager is waiting at the jet bridge. Evelyn collected her things. Mark and Brenda were nowhere in sight. Stepping off the plane, Evelyn spotted a woman in a crisp navy suit, Karen Davis, customer relations manager. Senator Hayes, Ms. Davis said, extending a hand, her expression one of deep concern, I'm here to address the incident. Thank you for meeting me, Evelyn replied, setting aside her frustration for the moment. We need to talk about what happened and how American Airlines intends to handle it. They stepped aside to a quiet corner. First and foremost, Ms. Davis began, tablet ready, a sincere apology. I'm disheartened to learn of your experience. An apology is the first step, Evelyn acknowledged. But Mark and Brenda repeatedly harassed me. They only backed down when I showed my Senate ID. I understand, Ms. Davis said, taking notes. The flight crew's initial report confirms the key points. Do you wish to file a formal complaint? Yes, Evelyn confirmed. And I want assurance these employees face disciplinary measures and receive proper training. Whether I consider legal action depends on the airline's response. Understood. Mark and Brenda will be placed on immediate suspension pending a thorough investigation. If found responsible for violating our code of conduct, especially regarding discrimination, they could face termination. I hope the investigation is swift and fair, Evelyn said. I'm a public figure, yes, but no passenger should endure their behavior. I've faced racial bias my entire life, I won't let it slide without accountability. Absolutely, Ms. Davis nodded firmly. I'll escalate this to our VP of Customer Experience. As part of our remediation, we'd like to offer compensation. Evelyn waved a hand. I'm not looking for freebies. I want the airline's culture to change so the next person who doesn't fit someone's stereotype of a first-class passenger isn't treated like a criminal. That's our goal too, Senator. I'll keep you updated. By the time Evelyn reached Capitol Hill, her phone was buzzing non-stop. Emily met her outside the Senate office building. Senator, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, everyone wants a statement. Okay, Evelyn sighed. Set up a short press availability after my committee hearing. She delivered her remarks on infrastructure funding with poise, but the moment the hearing ended, reporters swarmed. Senator Hayes, can you confirm you were harassed? Is it true you had to show your Senate ID? Evelyn raised a hand. Yesterday, I experienced an incident of bias from 2 American Airlines employees. Their behavior singled me out. While disappointed, I'm not shocked. Racial bias is real. I filed a formal complaint and trust American Airlines will take appropriate action. My focus is ensuring all passengers travel without facing discrimination. She kept her answers concise, refusing to let the saga overshadow her legislative work but recognizing the power of the moment to highlight a broader issue. As she left, an email arrived from Karen Davis: Mark and Brenda were suspended. 2 days later, headlines splashed the story. Late that afternoon, Karen Davis called. Senator Hayes, our investigation found Mark and Brenda have a track record of unprofessional conduct, including prior complaints. Their behavior toward you violated multiple policies. And the outcome? Evelyn asked. They've both been terminated, Ms. Davis confirmed. Additionally, we're rolling out mandatory refresher training on diversity and inclusion for all customer-facing staff next week. Evelyn absorbed the news. While taking no pleasure in their job loss, she knew consequences were necessary. I appreciate the swift action. I hope this sends a message. Had Mark and Brenda treated her with basic courtesy, none of this would have happened. Their prejudice led to an explosive fallout, forcing the airline to reckon with its internal culture. Through it all, Evelyn remained focused on her path, seeking fairness, not vengeance. Yet she couldn't deny a small sense of relief that the matter was settled with firm repercussions, a stark reminder that underestimating the quiet figure in the corner can indeed be a profound mistake. This story is a powerful reminder that judging a book by its cover, especially through the lens of prejudice, can lead to serious fallout. True character and influence aren't always advertised. Senator Hayes' experience underscores a vital truth: treating everyone with fundamental respect isn't just good manners, it's essential because you never truly know who you're dealing with or the impact your actions might have. Let's carry that lesson forward, challenging our own assumptions. What did you take away from this story? I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If stories like this resonate with you, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribing means you won't miss the next one we share together. Thanks for being part of this community.